Uh. To whoever may need this nugget of encouragement, things will be alright, so quit your worrying. I get it.
What's good, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of For the Underdogs podcast. I'm excited because I'm at home today. I'm actually shooting from a home studio that I have put together, and it's super important for me because I want to be consistent with this podcast and just make it easy. You know, everything that I do is about having a flow to it, and I want to feel like I'm always on the right flow. So there's times where things may come across my phone, or I read something, watch something, and I want to be able to share my thoughts on those things, or even, you know, express my feelings on them. And this just makes it that much easier. So super excited to have this space set up. It'll be changing, obviously, as we continue to build this podcast out. And so, yeah, I'm excited. Sorry for the wait, man. I feel like it's been super long since we've dropped something. I'm not really trying to put a timetable on when I drop these episodes. I definitely want to be in the right headspace every time that I step in front of this microphone, because it's purposeful work for me. You know, this is super therapeutic for me to speak about these topics that I'm bringing up. And in a lot of ways, I'm part of my own audience as well. You know, I got a phone call actually yesterday, and it was like, hey man, when you shooting another podcast? And to me, you know, that's always a great feeling when people are gravitating towards the work. But I was also in the space of, when will I really want to dive back into topics that I'm talking about? You know, a lot of energy goes into these conversations, and I almost feel like over the past few weeks, each episode from 1 through 5 just happened so organically, you know, and the people that were there, the conversations that we had, they were so natural and really important to lay the foundation of what I wanted this podcast to be about, and where I wanted to continue to as we move forward in our episodes. That being said, a level of exhaustion almost comes with that. You know, when you're bringing up these topics about mental health and routine and self-development, a lot of digging from past experiences come up, and it's pretty exhausting. This was the first time, obviously this is a new space for me, but that was the first time that I really noticed I needed to give myself a break. And not like I was burnt out, but just a little exhausted, you know? And I actually came across a quote that I want to share with you guys, because it describes everything that I think the break was about for me. And it says, if you demand a strong work ethic from yourself, then also grant yourself a strong rest ethic. Because if you're serious about progress, sustainable long-term progress, quality rest has to become a priority. Rest isn't an occasional reward. It's a consistent requirement for strong, purposeful work. I wish I knew who said that quote. I just screenshotted it on my phone, and it's something that's super powerful, because I feel like this is purposeful work. You know, whoever resonates with these messages, the text messages that I've gotten have been super fulfilling from a standpoint of helping people understand or cope with their things the right way. And that's purposeful, you know, and I see this as, like this quote says, if you're serious about long-term progression, this is something that's a long-term for me. It's not just a phase that I'm going through. This is something that I truly feel like my experiences and my perspective on things can help people from all ages, older than me, younger than me. And that's the most impactful piece of it. So I had a hard time. I've always had a hard time giving myself grace when it comes to resting. You guys know, former NFL, there's not a lot of time for rest when you're in that career. You know, a huge saying when I played was, and you hear coaches say this all the time, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And while that may not be true, that is so ingrained in me, in the back of my mind, that, you know, if I take a day off, or if I'm, you know, not progressing towards my goals, that I'm actually failing or I'm falling behind my competition. And I'm not in this for competition purposes, but I'm a competitor at my core. So, I obviously feel a certain type of way if I am missing days or I don't shoot an episode or I'm not, jotting down or reading or journaling, things like that. That eats away at me at my core. So I've always had a hard time giving myself grace to rest. And this is the first time that I decided I was going to give myself the proper break I needed, and my body and mind would speak to me when it was time for me to shoot another episode. So obviously right now is the time, and I feel good about shooting this episode. But don't get me wrong, like there's always a time to grind it out. I don't want to mix up that message. I've always been a grinder. That's something I pride myself on, is being able to grind through situations and reach my highest purpose, whether it was on the field or off-season training, or even in my, journey as a man and as a person. I've always felt like there's a certain type of grind that comes with, you can't let up at this point. So don't confuse giving yourself grace to rest with there's never a right time to grind, because I do believe that we do have to go after for what we want. Just in my situation, I felt like because I am speaking on topics that are so close to me, I wanted to put in the work. And when I took this break, it was a break that I needed from a standpoint of I wanted to dive deeper into myself. I really picked up my consistency with journaling and, meditating, praying, and just taking care of my body, getting things back on track. Because obviously when you dive into new stuff and you have new things that you're doing, meeting people and things like that, you may slip up on some of those things. And that was something that I needed to figure out how to implement in my routine so that I feel complete when I'm shooting these podcasts. I don't want to be slacking in, an area of fitness or health just to get in front of the camera and shoot an episode. I feel like everything has to be in alignment for myself to be the best person, So like I said, I am super happy to be back shooting this episode. Today, I want to talk about how we measure success in our personal journeys, like our personal growth and the path to reaching our best self. That's been something that has changed for me over the course of, my 32 years on this earth. Obviously, transitioning out of playing from the NFL, it was a huge adjustment in how I measure success. And I had a hard time with it. It took a lot of therapy sessions with my therapist to really kind of figure out, what do you view as success outside of your football career? I know for a fact when I played, success to me was the accolades, whether it was college ball or NFL. It was like, you obviously want to be respected amongst your peers. And I think this goes for everyone in their career paths. Like when we look at success and what we think it's about, whatever job you do, whatever career path you're on, you obviously want to be respected by your colleagues, the people that you work with, as one of the better people at your company or profession. I think for me in the NFL, it was staying healthy. Being available for your team is a huge factor in the NFL. If you're not available, how can you help your team? And another aspect was playing valuable minutes to help contribute. I viewed all those things as success. Obviously lifting, running, having endurance and the strength training, those are also pieces of success that you think about when you're a professional athlete. But those things are super tangible and really easy to kind of know if you met those goals or not. It's like being a salesman, whether real estate or, a car salesman, whatever you're selling. If you say, okay, I want to sell 20 houses this year, and that'll put me in the top 10% of what I do, it's really easy to know whether or not you accomplish that goal or not. Same for me in the NFL. It was really easy for me to know, did I play valuable minutes? Did I contribute to my team winning? Did I stay healthy? Was I available? And, did I put my best foot forward every time that I stepped on the field? Those things were easy for me to know. You get graded and it's black and white. In our personal journeys as people, in the growth journeys, it's not so much black and white. There's no checkbox to whether you finally surpassed a trigger or whether you finally learn to change your thought patterns. Until you get to that point, there's no progress report on that. You can say, yeah, I feel like I'm getting better at that, but maybe the situation hasn't came to you in which you're able to tell that you've actually dealt with that thing. I feel like the hard part about it all is like, sometimes I know I've dealt with this. I've let my inability to measure success actually deter me away from staying on the path I was on. Maybe just speaking from my experience, thought patterns, I put a lot of work in changing the way that my mind is and the way that my perspective is. But early on, there were times where I thought I had changed the thought pattern, but a situation would arise. And then afterwards, I would realize, man, you haven't really done the work that you thought you did. And it would kind of put me, it was like taking one step forward and two steps back, because you think you've passed this level of changing something, but then you're right back to where you started, and almost worse, because it's like you get a chink in your armor, so to speak. And it's something that you have to restart all over again so that when you are given that situation, you don't react the same way. I feel like when we develop our ability to measure success, we really develop the ability to appreciate who we are at our core. Speaking from experience, I know when I was able to really gauge how I was being successful in my personal life, my self-confidence, self-worth, and just self-respect takes a boost. When you can really notice the work that you've been putting in has really been helping alter your mindset or who you are as a person, all those things get a boost, and it's a good feeling. We live in a time now where we kind of fall into the societal norms. Society tells us that if we go to school, go to college, get a great paying job, have a house, a family, all those things are viewed as success in our society. And, rightfully so. Obviously, all of those things make you successful, but there are also people that have all of those things, but are stagnant from a place of growth and who they are as a person. So where do we draw the line with that? It's like a double-edged sword. Like, yeah, you tell us we should do this and that's considered success, but you see people that have that and they're either not happy because they haven't grown from when they got those things, or there are people that have that and have managed to implement growing as a person while having all of these things that we view as success in society. In my opinion, I feel like we should aim to live lives that flow. So many times, like in our community, we almost take it as a badge of honor if you've been through so much, or you've, you're exhausted and you're grinding and nothing's happening for you. People are like, keep going. It's going to happen. Sometimes you got to recognize that the flow isn't going smoothly enough for you and pivot. I think that's a huge piece of being able to grow within yourself, is recognizing that some things may not align with who you truly are. But just because society tells us that you should do this, that, and the third, doesn't mean that it's right for you at that point in time. We really got to be authentic too. I think authenticity is one of the biggest things that can help us notice success on our journeys to our highest self or the best person that we can be. Authenticity allows us to really be honest with ourselves and really pick the work that needs to be done. You know, you have to be able to look in the mirror and say, I know that I'm not putting my best foot forward in this space. So let me figure out what needs to be done so that all of these other things can fall into line. You know, when we're not living our authentic lives, it kind of puts a ceiling on who we can be as a person, you know, because you're almost not giving your mind or your body everything that it needs to actually flourish. So if you're streaming this and you're in the space of really struggling, or not even struggling, but just, you know, at a standstill with where you are on your journey, I feel like I want to share the things that have helped me kind of either get past a roadblock or even just feel that reassurance within myself that I'm on the right path and I am able to measure my success or if I'm growing by using these things. The first thing I would say is set measurable goals. Like goals, obviously, that push you out of your comfort zone. I think that's super important as well. I want to talk about that a little bit. Like, set goals that force you to be better. Don't set goals that are, obviously, we want to set goals that are attainable because we want to be able to reach them. And maybe if you're at a point where you don't feel like you've reached the goals that you set, there is a way to set small goals just to get those little wins under your belt. The little wins add up, but set goals that force you to be uncomfortable. You know, I think a big piece for when I started noticing growth is when I stepped out of my comfort zone. And, you know, I wasn't a huge reader prior to a few years ago. And I set a goal of like reading 3-4 books in the year. And that was something that was out of my comfort zone. I had never really wanted to dive into information, especially, you know, when I was playing, it was just more about playbooks and things like that. I spent my time, my free time diving into playbooks and film. And a goal of mine was to read more books. I feel like a lot of knowledge is in these books, and I wanted to be able to retain information that could possibly help me out. So that was a goal of mine, and it was something small, something that is attainable. I know for a fact I can read 4 books in a year, and, you know, now I'm knocking books out like that, but that was something small at the time 2 years ago that just helped propel me to the next thing. So I would say set measurable goals and goals that push you out of your comfort zone, because we grow a lot when we step out of our comfort zone. And remember, like, anything that's new, and I think I heard this quote from Tony Robbins, anything that's new is gonna feel uncomfortable until your mind recognizes that it's good for you. Have the right perspective. Like, things are gonna be difficult or may feel unnormal, not normal at the time that you're doing it. But that's because you're breaking a habit that, you know, your mind believes is the right way to go about things. So don't get discouraged when, you know, you're doing these things and you don't feel that excitement around it. Like, just keep going, because once it becomes a part of your routine, your mind notices that, oh, I'm actually getting a benefit from this. So keep going on that path. Another tip I would say is super helpful is lifelong learning, like continuing to spark your mind. You know, don't get stagnant in learning new things. I think that our minds are always craving new knowledge, and that just keeps everything flowing. Like we always have to evolve and just expand our capabilities. I think that that's another piece that sometimes we get in that comfort zone of, we think we know it. We may know it all, but we have to have a growth mindset when you're trying to grow within. I think accepting that we don't know everything, have a conversation with someone and really listen to what they're saying and just learn from them as much as you can if they're on the path that you're trying to be on. Another huge tip I would say is keeping the right people around you. And it's not necessarily what they can do for you, but it's how they make you feel. Of course, we all want to tap into our networks, and I think that's a huge piece of growing is not using the people, but just engaging with people that we've come in contact with over the course of our lives that can help us expand. But how do the people make you feel that you're around? When you say you want to be better at this, are they supportive of those things, or do they just kind of brush it off and go about their conversation and not mention it? I think that's a huge piece. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I believe it was Orlando Bloom that said, go where you feel safe, celebrated, and seen. And that's not to say that, everyone has to throw a party when you come around or something like that. But do you feel celebrated in a sense of when you accomplish something that you consider was tough? Do they celebrate that with you just for the simple fact that they're one of your people that support you? Do you feel safe? Can you tell these people that you're aiming to be better, that, you're prioritizing your health, your mental health, your fitness? Can you tell these people that and feel safe around the whole conversation? And do you feel seen when you're around them? Do you feel like you're just a fly on the wall, or do they actually pay you the attention that you feel you deserve to keep coming around them? I think those are some important tips that I've learned when I'm choosing the crowd that I want to be around. Do I feel safe, celebrated, and seen? The last tip that I would say is super important that we don't do enough, and I know I never really did this enough, but celebrate yourself. Like if you're setting these goals and you're putting in all this effort to better yourself, we got to celebrate ourselves. We got to pat ourselves on the back, enjoy those wins and, feel good about accomplishing something. Because if we don't celebrate ourselves, how can we expect people to give us that credit when we accomplish something in our lives? That has to come from us first. And then that just kind of trickles out into the real world. But celebrate yourself. These are things that are not easy. If it was easy, everyone would be the best person they could be, their highest self. It's an actual task to really stay on top of these things. So yeah, I hope that gives y'all a little guideline on how to measure success in our personal growth. To me, it's something that we're constantly working towards. Don't ever get discouraged because you feel like you haven't reached that destination. It's something that we always have to wake up and make that decision to be a better person, to continue to expand our knowledge, to continue to grow and, set goals that challenge us. I think that's a huge thing in this personal growth journey. So I appreciate you guys tuning in today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and got some valuable information out of it. Remember to like, subscribe, tag me in it if you're sharing it, at Jamil on Instagram, at For the Underdogs Podcast on Instagram as well. Sorry for the wait, but I'm super glad to be back sharing with you guys.